He threw $100 at me and called me worthless. 10 years later, my billion-dollar revenge bought the company that made me nothing. My father always said money was the only measure of a man's worth. On the day I left home, he made sure to demonstrate exactly how little he thought I was worth. "Here's $100, he sneered, throwing the bills at my feet. "That's all a failure like you deserves." I was 22, fresh out of college with an engineering degree. My parents hadn't bothered to attend the ceremony. Standing in our expansive living room, my single suitcase packed with everything I owned, I watched the bills flutter to the marble floor like fallen leaves. The Harrison family fortune loomed around us. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, priceless art, all of it screaming old money and older pride. For generations, we'd been investment bankers, each son following his father into the prestigious halls of Harrison & Sons Investment Group, until me. Engineering, my father had spat when I declared my major. Engineers are glorified mechanics. No son of mine will waste his life tinkering with machines. But I saw something they didn't. While they were counting their millions in traditional investments, I recognized that the future belonged to technology. The next great fortunes wouldn't be made in mahogany-paneled investment offices. They'd be built in garages and labs by people who understood how to merge innovation with opportunity. My mother stood by the grand staircase, martini in hand at barely noon. "James, darling, there's still time to fix this. Come back to the firm. Your father can smooth things over with the board." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the practiced smile that had never quite reached her eyes. Growing up, I'd watched her measure her worth by the size of her diamond rings, each one larger than the last, as if trying to fill some void that kept expanding. "No, Mother, I'm done trying to be what you want." My father's face turned that dangerous shade of red I'd grown up fearing. "Then get out. You're no longer a Harrison. The trust fund, the connections, the legacy, you're throwing it all away for some foolish dream." I bent down and picked up the $100. The bills were crisp, new. He probably had his assistant get them from the bank specifically for this moment of theatrical cruelty. "Keep the trust fund," I said, tucking the bills into my wallet. "I'll build something of my own." My father laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. "You build something? You can barely dress yourself properly." He gestured at my simple button-down shirt and slacks, so different from his custom-tailored suit. "Without the Harrison name, you're nothing." Those words would echo in my mind for years to come, driving me through countless sleepless nights and impossible challenges. But in that moment, I just smiled. "Watch me." I walked out of that mansion with $100, a suitcase, and an engineering degree they thought was worthless. My childhood home's enormous iron gates closed behind me with a final, dramatic clang. Standing on the sidewalk, I realized I had no car. It was in my father's name, no place to live. The apartment near college had been paid for by the trust fund, and exactly $100 to my name. But I had something they didn't understand, a vision of the future and the skills to build it. I walked to the bus station, bought a $40 ticket to Silicon Valley, and used another $10 on a burger and fries. Sitting in that greasy diner, watching buses come and go, I opened my notebook and wrote 3 promises to myself. I would never use the Harrison name for gain. I would build something that would change the world, and when I returned, it would be on my own terms. $50 left, not enough to rent a place, barely enough to eat for a few days. But I had my laptop, my degree, and most importantly, an idea that had been forming in my mind throughout college. The world was rapidly moving toward renewable energy, but there was a critical problem no one had solved: storage. Solar and wind power were becoming cheaper, but batteries remained inefficient and expensive. I had developed a theoretical design for a new type of energy storage system, one that could revolutionize the entire industry. The problem was, building it would take millions in funding, years of research and resources I didn't have. My professors had called the idea brilliant but impractical. My father had called it delusional. I called it my future. As my bus pulled away from the station, I watched my hometown disappear into the darkness. I'd spent 22 years trying to be the son they wanted. Now it was time to become the man I was meant to be. Little did I know that this $100 journey was the beginning of a story that would reshape the entire energy industry. In 10 years, I would build a company worth billions, revolutionize how the world stored and used energy, and return home not as the prodigal son, but as someone they never imagined I could become. But first, I had to survive Silicon Valley with $50 and a dream that wouldn't die. Silicon Valley wasn't the gleaming tech paradise I'd imagined. My first night, I slept on a bench in a park in Palo Alto, using my laptop bag as a pillow and my jacket as a blanket. By morning, my $50 had become $30 after buying a cup of coffee and a bagel at a local cafe. But that cafe changed everything. "You're going to get robbed sleeping out there," the barista said, watching me try to stretch my coffee for hours while using their Wi-Fi. Her name was Maya, and instead of kicking me out, she offered me a deal: help fix their constantly breaking espresso machine, and I could sleep in the storage room after hours. I fixed their machine in 20 minutes. The owner was so impressed he offered me a part-time job doing maintenance work. Just like that, I had income and a place to sleep, even if that place was a room full of coffee beans and paper cups. During the day, I worked at the cafe. During the night, I refined my energy storage designs, using the cafe's Wi-Fi to research patents and technology trends. Maya would sometimes bring me leftover pastries, peek at my complex diagrams, and ask questions that actually helped me clarify my thinking. "So, basically, you're building a better battery?" she asked one night. "Not exactly," I explained, showing her my sketches. "Traditional batteries waste too much energy during storage and transfer. My design uses a new type of molecular structure that could store energy at almost 100% efficiency." She stared at the diagrams. "And why isn't anyone else doing this?" "Because it's theoretically impossible," I grinned. "But I think I found a way." 3 months of cafe work gave me enough savings to rent a tiny room in a shared house with 5 other tech dreamers. It wasn't much, but it had a desk where I could work. I also started freelancing as a technical consultant, helping local startups with engineering problems. That's how I met David Chin. "Your solution for our power management issue saved us months of work," he said after I'd helped his startup fix a critical hardware problem. "What else are you working on?" I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. I showed him my energy storage designs. David was silent for a long time, staring at my detailed technical specifications. Finally, he looked up. "This could change everything, but you'll need serious funding to build a prototype." "I know," I said. I didn't tell him about my family's wealth or the trust fund I'd walked away from. "I'm working on it." David proved to be more than just another client. He introduced me to Dr. Sarah Wong, a leading researcher in molecular engineering at Stanford. She spent 6 hours grilling me about my designs, trying to find flaws in my theories. "It's ambitious," she finally said. "Maybe impossible. But if it works—" She paused. "I have some connections at Berkeley's Energy Research Center. Would you be interested in using their lab facilities?" "Would I be interested in accessing one of the world's top research facilities?" "Yes," I managed to say calmly, "I would." For the next year, I worked 4 jobs: cafe maintenance in the mornings, freelance consulting during the day, research at Berkeley's labs in the evenings, and refining my designs late into the night. I lived on energy drinks and determination. Then came the breakthrough. It happened at 3 in the morning in the Berkeley lab. I'd been testing different molecular configurations for weeks, trying to find the perfect structure for energy storage. When the test results came back, I checked them 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It worked. The prototype stored energy at 98.7% efficiency, nearly perfect energy transfer, something that was supposed to be impossible. Dr. Wong verified my results herself. "This isn't just a breakthrough," she said, staring at the data. "This is revolutionary." Within a week, I had meetings with 3 major venture capital firms. David helped me prepare my pitch, and Maya came over every night to help me practice, throwing tough questions at me until my answers were perfect. The first 2 VC firms said the same thing: brilliant, but too risky. The third meeting was different. "Your technology could revolutionize renewable energy storage," said Alexander Martinez, the lead partner at Quantum Ventures. "But why should we trust a 23-year-old unknown?" I met her eyes. "Because I spent the last year proving impossible things are possible. Give me a chance to prove one more." They invested $5 million for a 25% stake in my company, which I named Nova Energy Systems. The name was a private joke, a new star rising from nothing. I moved the research to our own facility, hired a small team of brilliant engineers, and worked harder than ever. We faced countless technical challenges, numerous failures, and moments when it seemed everything would fall apart. But 2 years later, we did it. Our first commercial-scale energy storage system was ready for testing. When the results came in, they exceeded even our highest expectations. Our system could store and deliver energy with 99.1% efficiency, 3 times better than the best existing technology. The energy industry exploded with interest. Solar and wind power suddenly became not just viable but economically superior to fossil fuels. Every major power company wanted our technology. Nova Energy Systems went public 3 years after that first VC investment. The stock price doubled on the first day. By the end of the week, my stake in the company was worth over $100 million. I bought my first suit since leaving home, not from the expensive tailor my father used, but from a boutique that catered to tech executives. Maya, now our head of operations, helped me choose it. "Planning to show off for someone?" she asked with a knowing smile. "No," I said, adjusting the perfectly fitted jacket, "but I think it's time to pay a visit home." I hadn't spoken to my family in 5 years. Through business news and social media, I knew Harrison and Sons Investment Group was struggling. Traditional investment banking was dying, disrupted by financial technology and changing markets. They needed to adapt, to invest in new technologies, exactly what I had tried to tell them years ago. Now they were facing their biggest crisis yet, a hostile takeover attempt by a mysterious tech-focused investment firm. What they didn't know was that the firm, Digital Horizon Capital, was a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems, my company. I booked a flight home, my $100 million net worth a far cry from the $100 I'd left with, but I wasn't going back to reconcile or to gloat. I was going back to buy the company that had declared me worthless. Maya caught me staring at an old family photo before I left. "Are you sure about this?" I tucked the photo away. They taught me that money was the only measure of worth. Time to show them exactly what I'm worth. I didn't know then that my return would shake the Harrison family to its core, that my revenge would be both sweeter and more complicated than I'd imagined, or that the $100 lesson they taught me would end up costing them everything. But I was about to find out. The Harrison and Sons Investment Group headquarters hadn't changed. The same imposing limestone building, the same gold lettering, the same air of old money arrogance. But this time, I walked through the front door not as the disappointing son, but as the CEO of the company trying to acquire them. "Mr. Blake, here to see the board," I told the receptionist, using the name I'd adopted after leaving. She directed me to the top floor, not recognizing the prodigal son returning home. The Harrison boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of past chairmen, the family crest carved above the fireplace. I played under that table as a child, listening to my father negotiate deals and destroy competitors. Now I sat at the head of that table, waiting. They filed in one by one, board members, executives, and finally my father. He'd aged more than 5 years should allow, his once commanding presence diminished by stress and failing fortune. He didn't recognize me at first, his eyes sliding past me as he took his seat. "Gentlemen," I began, "I'm here representing Digital Horizon Capital regarding our offer to acquire Harrison and Sons. We're not interested in being acquired by some tech upstart," my father snapped, still not really looking at me. "Harrison and Sons has stood for 150 years and will collapse within 5 if you don't adapt," I cut in, letting my natural voice replace the carefully neutral tone I'd been using. "Isn't that right, Father?" The room went deadly silent. My father's face went from red to white as recognition dawned. "James, hello, Father. Miss me?" One of the board members, old Mr. Peterson, who'd known me since childhood, actually gasped. "Little James Harrison?" "Actually, it's James Blake now," I corrected him, "and I'm here to discuss the future of this company." My father's shock turned to anger. "This is some kind of trick. You're working for Digital Horizon?" I smiled. "No, Father, I own Digital Horizon. It's a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems. I enjoyed watching their faces as the connection hit them. Yes, that Nova Energy Systems, the company revolutionizing energy storage technology worldwide." "Impossible," my father whispered. "You left with nothing." "No," I said softly. "I left with $100, your last lesson about the value of money." "Would you like to know what that lesson bought?" I nodded to my assistant, who began distributing folders to each board member. "Nova Energy Systems is now worth $4.2 billion. Digital Horizon Capital, which you somehow failed to investigate properly, is our investment arm. Over the past year, we've been quietly buying Harrison & Sons stock through various shells and subsidiaries. I opened my folder. As of this morning, we own 45% of your shares. We also own the majority of your corporate debt, which, thanks to your recent difficulties, is substantial. The blood drained from my father's face as he realized the full scope of what I'd accomplished. The son he'd thrown away had returned to take everything. The offer is simple, I continued. Harrison & Sons will be absorbed into Digital Horizon. The family name will be retired. The board will be dissolved. I paused, looking directly at my father. And you will step down, effective immediately. You can't do this, he sputtered. The family legacy is dying, I cut in sharply. Your investment strategies are outdated, your technology is ancient, and your arrogance has blinded you to the changing world. I tried to tell you this 5 years ago, but you were too proud to listen. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. James, surely we can discuss this. You're still a Harrison. No, I said firmly. You all made it very clear that I stopped being a Harrison the day I chose to build something new instead of clinging to something old. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here for business. I stood up, straightening my custom-made suit that cost more than that first $100 1,000 times over. You have 24 hours to accept the offer. If you refuse, Digital Horizon will call in all outstanding loans immediately. Harrison & Sons will not survive the week my father found his voice again. You would destroy your own family's company, everything we built? No, Father. You destroyed it with your stubborn refusal to change. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left. The jobs, the clients, the legacy you claim to care about so much. Whether that legacy bears the Harrison name is no longer your choice. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Father? Remember when you said money was the only measure of a man's worth? I smiled coldly. By your own measure, what am I worth now? The next 24 hours passed in a blur of legal meetings and press inquiries. News of Nova Energy Systems takeover had leaked, sending Harrison & Sons stock into chaos. My father tried to fight, of course, calling in old favors and trying to rally support, but I had anticipated everything. Every escape route was blocked. Every potential white knight was already aligned with us. Every financial lifeline was closed. The empire he'd spent his life protecting was now in my hands. They signed the papers the next day in the same room where he'd once thrown $100 at my feet. As the lawyers finalized the details, my father approached me. He looked old, beaten, but there was something else in his eyes, something that might have been respect or perhaps just resignation. You planned this, he said quietly. All of it. No, Father. You planned it the moment you decided my dreams weren't worth respecting. I just built something better than you could imagine. He nodded slowly. And now, will you destroy everything out of revenge? I looked at him for a long moment. No, I'm going to rebuild it into something that actually matters. Harrison & Sons will become part of a company that's helping to solve the world's energy crisis, not just moving money from one account to another. The fact that it's no longer yours is just poetic justice. As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. James, I turned. That $100. I smiled. Best investment I ever made, Father. It taught me exactly what I didn't want to become. The transition took 6 months. I restructured the company completely, modernizing its operations and redirecting its resources towards sustainable energy investments. Most of the employees kept their jobs. After all, this wasn't about punishing them for my father's sins. My father retired to our old family estate, his pride more wounded than his wallet. I'd ensured he kept enough money to live comfortably. My mother tried to reach out several times, always with hints about reconciliation, but I kept my distance. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. A year later, I stood in my office at Nova Energy Systems headquarters, looking out over Silicon Valley. Maya brought in a small package that had arrived from my father. Inside were the same $100 bills he'd thrown at me 5 years ago. I'd left them on his desk after the takeover signing. With them was a note. You were worth more than I knew. I took the bills to the cafe where my journey had started. The same barista who'd once given me shelter was now a senior executive in my company, but the cafe still made the best coffee in Palo Alto. I left the $100 as a tip. Some might call it petty, using my success to take over my father's company. But I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because sometimes the only way to fix a broken legacy is to tear it down and build something better in its place. They say money can't buy happiness, but $100 taught me something more valuable. The true worth of a person isn't in their bank account or their family name. It's in what they choose to build with what they have. I built an empire, and I did it not because of the Harrison name, but in spite of it. The $100 I left with bought me something priceless, the freedom to become who I was meant to be. The millions I returned with, they just proved I was right all along, and that's worth more than any family fortune.